Meanwhile, everybody's like, well, fucking policy. It's policy to have murderesses and shit on the fucking staff. Expedite Kathy's leaving Korea after the murder. Let Timey wander in and out of the school. That's all okay. But God forbid somebody should take a fucking day off. God forbid a teacher that's been there for a year should get an extra week off. No, get them replaced with a total asshole that got into 5 fights since he got there. This is a kind of policy bullshit. Anyway, then I mentioned to, same day I mentioned to Jim that the concierge, the addressee of my building, had said that Timey was trying to, Timey had tried to come in to my apartment building the day that I was actually sick and I was going to stay home and rest. He says, kind of puts a stress on you knowing that this person's trying to get into your apartment. He'd responded, so what? Why should that bother you? Very vehement. So what? Why should that bother you? Fucking Jim. This was Jim. Later that day, Jim gives John an article entitled, Where Have All the Teachers Gone? Gone to graveyards, everyone. Anyway. Backtrack. Joke. First intelligible joke by Ed. When the ELS teachers arrive in Seoul, they search them for knives. If they don't have any, they give them some. Backtrack. Monday, March 19th. Timey shows up in teacher's room right after Barbie girls complain. Barbie girls are a pair of teachers. Right after the Barbie girls complained about her being there so often. And this all occurred right after a teachers' meeting where Jim Gillis had warned us about not letting unauthorized business salesmen into the class. That was another thing. You know, Timey wander in and out and up and down and around, but fucking God forbid, it is important not to let these unauthorized businessmen sit in on your classes. Definite. Absolutely no way. He's very strict about that. If there was any problem, you were to speak to him. Timey was a different story, of course. Timey was just like, didn't enter into his consciousness at all, so fuck it. Anyway, so the Barbie girls complained to Jim about Timey being there, and she was there at the moment. So Pat and I were headed back upstairs to the teacher's room anyway, and oh no, the Barbie girls had complained about Timey being there so much. Timey shows up. We tell Jim. Jim follows us up the stairs. We have to go first. Jim, the ex-Marine, a Vietnam veteran, decorated helicopter pilot, follows us up the stairs into the teacher's room where Timey is. Thank you very much. Jim, very comforting, I'm sure. So Pat and I hid in the bunk room. And we assumed that Jim was going to, speak to Timey or something. But when we came out of the bunk room, Timey was eating lunch with Tamara and Suki and a bunch of other teachers. Later, Tamara said that Jim had told her, Timey, that she couldn't come anymore, and then he fled. Timey cried, according to Tamara. We'd all left by then. It's a bit much, that 4th or 5th visit by Timey. Backtrack. Mr. Park asking me to collect the bills from Timey. Remember that? Tamara's humorous postcards and letters from Kathy. ELS has the nickname in Seoul, School for Murder. That's what its new nickname was, according to the students. ELS was the School for Murder. Backtrack. Officer Cho. John and I met him going back to our apartments on Monday night. We went up to the apartment. He reiterated his idea of Timey's involvement. Backtrack. Friday night, Saturday night. Officer Cho rings the apartment to meet Pat. tells us about the 18 wounds in the body. 2/3 of her neck was cut after she was dead, and the soles of her feet were cut after she was dead. And I remembered when Tiny said, when I saw her feet weren't bleeding, I knew she was dead, and something about her throat. He said that after she was dead, which was what I figured, they knew that it was after she was dead because the heart doesn't pump any blood. So there was no blood came from these wounds. In other words, Tiny goes up and cuts the woman's throat 2/3 open, no fucking blood. Could be a mind blower, you know. And Officer Joe felt that Tiny was more involved than she was letting on, or that she remembered, or whatever. He also was saying that they never did do all that they could have done, take fingernail clippings, etc., partly because Kathy was shaking so bad they couldn't take fingernail clippings, and partly because of fear of an international incident. So, the other thing was the ashtrays. One time Tommy had mentioned to me before she was arrested, say, that she was so furious with the Korean cops when they went in. Apparently they'd all gone in, discovered the body, and it stayed there. Kathy called the police, and they just stayed there and waited there until the police came, and then they were kept there by the police. Anyhow, Tiny had said to me how incompetent the Korean police are. They emptied all the ashtrays. There could have been evidence in those ashtrays. Now, obviously, knowing what we know, it seems very evident to me that they probably planted some sort of evidence in the ashtray and were very disgusted when the police just emptied the ashtrays that they'd so carefully planted evidence in.